على مدى اليوم وغداً سنعمل سوية على صبر أغوار الديمقراطية محلياً وعالمياً، وسنستمع سوية إلى خيرة من خبراء الموضوع وممارسيه يتقدمهم رئيس جامعة بير زيت، هذا الصرح الديمقراطي العريق الذي خطى خطوات راسخة ومشرفة على درب الصمود. أدعو إلى المنصة الدكتور عبد اللطيف أبو حجلة ليرحب بالجميع ويفتتح أعمال المؤتمر.
صباح الخير. Good morning ladies and gentlemen. حضرات المشاركين والمشاركات في جلسات المؤتمر، الحضور الكرام، يسعدني افتتاح مؤتمركم هذا والترحيب بكم في جامعة بير زيت، حيث نفتخر بهذا التقليد الذي بات يشكل حدثاً سنوياً يترقبه جمهوره ويحظى باهتمام واسع، ولأن هذا المؤتمر يثير الأسئلة التي تهم القطاعات الأوسع من المجتمع الفلسطيني وتشغل مثقفيه، ولأنه يعالج القضايا التي يتطلب بناء المستقبل معالجتها، ويثير نقاشاً مهماً حول مستقبل المجتمع الفلسطيني، أي مستقبل الشباب والشابات. من أجل ذلك كله فإني أجده نموذجاً لعمل الجامعة بشكل عام ومعاهدها ومراكزها بشكل خاص، حيث تولي جامعتنا أهمية خاصة للتواصل مع المجتمع وتصغي إلى نبض الشارع وإلى الهموم المحلية والإقليمية والعالمية. أود التأكيد هنا على أن رؤية واستراتيجية جامعة بير زيت التي يحتاج تحقيقها إلى مكونات عدة، بينها التدريس والبحث والتخطيط والتواصل المجتمعي الذي يشكل نافذة أساسية لعلاقة الجامعة مع المجتمع، تشكل شرطاً لتقدم الجامعة ولاحتضانها في المجتمع، الذي يشكل خط الحماية الأهم والأكثر فاعلية في قدرة الجامعة على الاستدامة والحفاظ على استقلاليتها وعلى وجهتها الوطنية. كما يشكل التواصل على الصعيد العالمي مكوناً مهماً من مكونات هذه الجامعة دأبت عليه رغم التحديات والعراقيل التي تواجه هذا التواصل الطبيعي. وفي هذا السياق أود الترحيب بضيوفنا القادمين من خارج فلسطين للمشاركة في هذا المؤتمر. موضوع المؤتمر حيوي، فهو لا يتوقف عند تصميم النظام السياسي من حيث نخبه ومؤسساته، بل يذهب إلى الهدف الأسمى لعملية التنظيم السياسي وانعكاسات النظام السياسي عليه. ويبحث هذا المؤتمر عن الحرية والتحرر وعن المساواة والعدالة، وهي أمور نفتقدها في ظل الظروف التي نعيشها. لدينا كل يوم قصص عن أساتذة وطلبة وضيوف يمنعون من الوصول للجامعة، مرة بسبب الحاجز، ومرة بسبب عزل الضفة عن القدس، ومرة بسبب عزلها عن غزة، ومرة بسبب تحكم الاحتلال بالمعابر ورفض منح التأشيرات لمن يود الدراسة أو العمل من الخارج، طبعا في جامعة بير زيت. تشير وثائق هذا المؤتمر إلى إعادة مفهوم الديمقراطية في الحياة اليومية وفي الحيز العام إلى مكانته المحورية في نقاش التطور الديمقراطي في العالم وفي فلسطين، وإلى ضرورة وضع النقاش الجوهري حول الديمقراطية على جدول الأعمال الوطني في سياق الاحتياجات التنموية للمجتمع الفلسطيني. نحن نصبو إلى تنمية في فلسطين تفتح للشباب فرص للعمل، وتفتح للأساتذة آفاق البحث البحث العلمي وتفتح للمجتمع حياة أفضل. ولذلك فإني أوافقكم على أن هناك حاجة إلى دراسة طبيعة التدخل الذي يفضي إلى تنمية غير محكوم عليها بالفشل. وفي ملخصات المداخلات طروحات جريئة وأسئلة مهمة آن الأوان إلى طرحها للنقاش العام، بل ووضع النقاش حول فلسطين في سياق أوسع بالارتباط بما يدور في العالم، إذ يشكل ربط المحلي بالعالمي شرطا للتشخيص السليم وللعلاج المستدام. يتزامن هذا المؤتمر مع إجراءات لإنهاء ظاهرة الانقسام الفلسطيني الداخلي، إحدى معيقات مشروع التحرر الوطني وبناء الديمقراطية، وكلنا أمل أن يتكلل هذا المشروع بالنجاح وأن يشكل نقطة بداية جديدة للعمل الوطني نحو ترسيخ أسس الديمقراطية في فلسطين. ختاما أرحب بكم جميعا مرة أخرى، متمنيا لكم في عملكم التوفيق في عملكم، ومتطلعا إلى إسهامكم، آملا أن ينجم عن هذين اليومين حوار مثمر واستخلاصات بناءة، وآمل أن ينجح هذا المؤتمر في فتح النقاش واسعا وعميقا حول القضايا المدرجة على جدول أعمالكم. ولا يفوتني في نهاية كلمتي هذه إلى أن أتقدم بالشكر الجزيل إلى مؤسسة هنريتش بول ومؤسسة الحرم الجامعي العالمي لحقوق الإنسان لدعمهما المستمر لهذا المؤتمر. شكرا لحسن استماعكم.
شكرا دكتور عبد اللطيف على هذه الكلمة المعبرة والتي لم تسهى عن أي من مفاصل المؤتمر أو ما يحيط به. منذ إنشاء معهد مواطن في جامعة بيرزيت قبل عام ونيف، دأبت إدارة المعهد إلى ترسيخ منجزات مؤسسة مواطن، وهي المؤسسة الأصلية لهذا المؤتمر، وأيضا على تعزيز هوية المعهد المتجددة. ما يزال المشوار في أوله، غير أنه مشوار واعد وحافل وطموح. أدعو إلى المنصة الدكتور مدر قسيس، مدير معهد مواطن للديمقراطية وحقوق الإنسان، لتقديم كلمته.
صباح الخير. أكرر الترحيب بكم في مؤتمركم السنوي. أقول مؤتمركم ليس من باب المجاملة ولا المبالغة، بل لأننا في معهد مواطن نعتقد أننا ندين إلى المجتمع بقدرتنا على ترك القضايا الحيوية، وبقدرتنا على الحفاظ على منهاجنا العلمي والمهني من جهة، وعلى ارتباطنا وعلاقتنا العضوية مع مجتمعنا من جهة أخرى. أرى من واجبي أن أشارككم باختصار ما قمنا به على مدى الشهور الماضية تحضيرا لهذا المؤتمر، وعلى وجه التحديد ما يتعلق بموضوعه ومفهومه وأهدافه. إن ما يؤرقنا هو مستقبلنا، وهو مستقبل مرتبط بهذا العالم الذي يمر بتحولات كبيرة. فقد بات العالم يبدو صغيرا بالتكنولوجيا والاتصالات والمواصلات، لكنه بات أكبر من ذي قبل لكثرة ما يتسع من حروب وتقسيمات متزايدة، والاتساع البوني بين الثراء والفقر فيه، والاتساع الهوة بين الضعفاء والأقوياء. إنه العالم الذي ما يزال يصرف على السلاح أكثر بكثير مما يصرف على العلاج، وهو العالم الذي عاد يقترب من حرب عالمية ثالثة، وما زال بعض من معاصري الحربين الأولتين أحياء. وهو العالم الذي قرر الأقوياء فيه التراجع عن أهم منجزات البشرية ووقف التقدم نحو الحرية والعدالة والتعددية والتضامن والحق. وبعبارة أخرى، فإن ما يؤرقنا هو الهجمة على الديمقراطية وتراجع الأخيرة أمام أعيننا. لقد بتنا في فلسطين غير قادرين على صون نسيجنا الوطني والاجتماعي، وبتنا غير متأكدين مما سنفعل في يوم تحررنا ولا كيف سنصل إلى هناك. ليس هذا بسبب التقاعس ولا بسبب المبالاة، بل بسبب الاغتراب الذي تفرضه علينا متطلبات حياتية لا تنبع عن احتياجاتنا ولا عن تصميمنا، ولكن عن احتياجات من يريد تسليعنا وصولا إلى تسليع نضالنا الوطني ونضالنا في سبيل الديمقراطية وحقوق الإنسان. لن أطيل عليكم في وصف ما تعيشون، ولكن اسمحوا لي أن أذكركم بما يدور حولنا في هذه الساعات. مشروع صلح وطني في غزة نترقب نتائجه بأمل لكن دون ثقة، كما لو أنه كان لعبة كرة قدم نشجع كلنا فريق الوئام فيه، ولكننا لا نستطيع أن نجزم فعلا أنه سيفوز. لكننا نستحق أكثر من هذا الدور في صنع مستقبلنا. هناك جهة واحدة أعلنت بوضوح عما تريد. قالت الحكومة أنها ستفعل وأنها ستنتظر لترى كيف تسير الأمور وما الذي سيتمخض عن الحوارات المرعية في القاهرة، والشعب يأمل وغير متأكد من النتائج. وحركة حماس أعلنت عن مفاجآت ولكنها لم تعلن ماهيتها. أما السيد منيب المصري وهو شخصية مركزية في القطاع الخاص الفلسطيني فقد صرح وكتب وكرر أننا في حاجة إلى شركة قابضة تعمل على إعادة إعمار غزة، وأن اسمها شركة غزة للتطوير ضمن المبادرة الصينية لإعمار وتطوير غزة، وأنها نالت موافقة 70 دولة، وأن القطاع الخاص الفلسطيني رحب بها. فما هو موقف القطاع العام؟ وما هو موقف القطاع الأهلي؟ وما هو موقف أساتذة السياسة والاقتصاد؟ وما هو موقف الشعب؟ ولماذا يناقش مستقبل فلسطين في بكين وفي واشنطن وفي نيويورك وفي القاهرة وليس في الخليل؟ ما نتوخاه من هذا المؤتمر هو المساهمة في نقل النقاش حول المستقبل إلى الحيز العام، نقل النقاش من الأروقة إلى الشارع، وبخلاف ذلك سنبقى في حالة الاغتراب التي تجاوزت صمودنا البطولي على أرضنا. دعوني أوضح بكلمات قليلة. صمدنا على الأرض من أجل صون قضيتنا ونجحنا في الصمود، فتركنا للأرض وأخذت القضية إلى الأروقة التي لا نطال. وما نحتاجه هو إخراج القضية من الأروقة ووضعها في الميدان العام. ما أعنيه حين أقول القضية هو تحرير الإنسان أولا، وصون حريته ثانيا، وتحرير الأرض كشرط للأولتين ثالثا. وهذا يعني دحر الاحتلال أولا، والتخلص من التبعية ثانيا، ومنع احتكار الإرادة أو النضال أو القضية أي الديمقراطية كشرط لكل هذا، بيد أن هذه المهمة الصعبة باتت أكثر صعوبة اليوم بعدما صار يتوجب علينا تحرير الديمقراطية ذاتها من أغلفتها الجديدة التي شوهت جوهرها حين أزالت من مكوناتها العدالة والعقلانية والمساواة والحرية. كثيرا ما يتبادر لنا وبشكل خاص عند المنزلقات من مثل انقسام الضفة وغزة، أو نجاح الرئيس ترامب في الانتخابات، أو حصول اليمين القومي العنصري على نسبة كبيرة من أصوات الناخبين في فرنسا أو ألمانيا، أن علينا أن نبذل جهدا أكبر في سبر أعماق الديمقراطية وفهم مكوناتها وآلياتها وخدعها وأدواتها وما شابه، كي لا نصاب بالدهشة المرة تلو المرة. أما ما يراودني فهو أمر مختلف. لست أرانا مضطرين إلى كل هذا. هذا بنيان يدلف ويؤول إلى السقوط، وغير قادر على حماية من يقطنه. أما قاطنوه فهم من بناه ومن صممه. ربما آن الأوان لإعادة بنائه من جديد. أذكركم أنه لو عقد هذا المؤتمر بنفس الموضوع قبل عدة سنوات، أي إبان غليان الثورات في مصر وتونس وانتقالها إلى دول عديدة، لكان عنوانه على الأغلب إعادة صوغ العقد الاجتماعي. ولست أرى أن الحاجة إلى إعادة صوغ العقد الاجتماعي تغيرت. فإذا كانت الديمقراطية أساساً وسيلة لتحقيق الإرادة الجمعية، فلنتمم صوغ هذه الإرادة ونجد السبل لتحقيقها، وتكون هذه هي الديمقراطية. وبعبارة أخرى، لماذا لا نعيد تعريف الديمقراطية بدلا من المحاولات المستمرة لتفسيرها وتأويلها وكأنها مقدسة؟ إنها حتما ليست قرآنا. بقي أن أشير إلى قضية واحدة، هذه مهمة، إعادة صوغ وتعريف الديمقراطية. لا يستطيع الخبراء الاطلاع بها، فهي تحتاج إلى جبروت شعبي وهمة شبابية وحكمة جمعية وخبرة نضالية، وبعد هذه كلها فقط يأتي دور الأكاديميين. ليس في خطاب هذا ادعاء أن هذا المؤتمر سيقوم بالمهمة، ولكنه بمساهمة الجميع قادر على فتح باب النقاش بأوسع مما اعتدنا عليه، حين نؤطر نقاشنا ضمن مسلمات ما باتت تصلح إلا لاكتشاف الهوة الواسعة بين النظرية والتطبيق في مجال ما يطلق عليه الحوكمة الديمقراطية. ولكني على ثقة أن أزمة الحاضر تبشر بولادة ديمقراطية جديدة يتهددها كما يتهدد كل ولادة عسيرة لم يكن الأب راضيا عنها، ولكنها ستتم وفقا لقوانين الطبيعة. وفي حالة المجتمع السياسي فإن ما يقابل قوانين الطبيعة هو إرادة الشعب. ولأننا نعتقد أن بالإمكان تعريف الديمقراطية من جديد، حاولنا صوغ برنامج يناقش عددا من مشارب حياتنا اليومية دون التوقف عند النظام السياسي والسلطات وفصلها، ولا عند مؤسسات النظام الديمقراطي وغيرها. أردنا أن نعيد المفهوم إلى مهده وأهله، إلى الناس وهمومهم وطموحاتهم وتطلعاتهم، ليس من باب الطوبوية ولكن من باب الأمل. أريد أن أختم، ولكن يجب أن أذكر أن هذا المؤتمر يعني يأخذ بعده الدولي وإمكانياته بسبب التعاون المشكور مع مؤسسة هنريش بول، وبسبب تواجد ودعم الحرم العالمي اللي هو تجمع لحوالي 100 جامعة في العالم اللي بتناقش وبتدرس في قضايا الديمقراطية وحقوق الإنسان. فشكرا لكل المساهمين في إنجاح هذا المؤتمر. بداية أهم سبب لنجاح المؤتمر هو وجودكم هون. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا دكتور مضر. إنه مؤتمر حافل وغني، وشأن الديمقراطية وحقوق الإنسان التي بقدر ما هي محلية هي أيضا عالمية، شأن رسالة المعهد وجمهوره وزواره. نحن هنا في هذه البقعة الجغرافية المحدودة المساحة لسنا في كهف معزول أو محمي. إننا وإن كنا في المجمل مفعولا به، لدينا رصيد مما يحسب لنا كفاعلين، بل ومتفاعلين مع المجريات العالمية. يشرفنا أن تكون الكلمة المفتاحية لهذا المؤتمر لضيف له باع طويل في العمل الأكاديمي والميداني فيما يتعلق بحقوق الإنسان في العالم. الدكتور مانفريد نوفاك هو الآن الأمين العام للمركز الأوروبي للتعاون الجامعي، إلى جانب مناصب أخرى. تمتد خبرته ومعرفته تاريخيا وجغرافيا من بالي شرقا إلى سجن غوانتنامو غربا، مرورا بالبوسنة والهرسك وسجن أبو غريب، وتتعمق لتطال قضايا عالمية كالتعذيب وأطفال المعتقلات. فهو شغل مناصب قلة شغلتها، منها قاضيا في محكمة حقوق الإنسان، ومقررا للأمم المتحدة، ومؤلفا مشاركا لأبحاث لصالحها، بالإضافة إلى مساهماته المتميزة في العالم الأكاديمي. أدعو إلى المنصة الدكتور مانفريد نوفاك الذي سيصهر لنا معارفه وتجاربه في مداخلة يشرح لنا فيها أثر النيوليبرالية على الديمقراطية. أنوه إلى أن كلمته ستكون باللغة الإنجليزية، فليتفضل.
Thank you, Joyce, for the very nice words of introduction. It's very good to be back in Palestine, and I'm very honored to also speak at the beginning. When we were, and Muda is not listening, so I have to, because I'm referring to you, when we were sitting under a tree in Mahidol University in Bangkok in May of this year, having a secret smoke, because Mahidol University does not allow smoking, and I'm happy that Birzeit University is more liberal in that way. So we were sitting there, and he told me that he is actually organizing this conference on democracy in the public square. Then I said, but yeah, we should actually put it in the context of the global campus of human rights. As Secretary General of the European Inter-University Center for Human Rights and Democratization in Venice, I'm also responsible to some extent for the global campus of human rights, which is now encompassing 7 regional master programs, and I'm very happy that in addition to the Arab master, there are also representatives here from the African master, from the Southeast Europe master, and from the European master here. But of course, the Arab master is our youngest child, and Birzeit University played a very important role in establishing this master in the Arab world from the very beginning, and we now moved it also to Lebanon, so it will be fun. Yes. And we will officially open the first Arab Master in Democracy and Human Rights that is organized in Beirut later in October of this year. I was asked to speak about the impact of neoliberalism on democracy on a more broader level, and I'm very happy to do that, but I start, and I try to ask for the next slide, to make a very short introduction to how democracy can be defined from the perspective of international human rights. International meaning United Nations Universal Standard. And of course, there are a couple of rights, and I'm saying that because very often in development cooperation, etc., the term human rights is seen as a dirty word. It's something that you shouldn't mention because then you don't get funding and you have problems. So it's better you speak about democracy and good governance and these kind of things. Seeing democracy as the broader concept, I see human rights as the broader concept, and human rights and democracy are intrinsically linked, are interlinked, and that's what I want to show at the beginning very shortly. Perhaps the next slide. I don't know to whom I actually have to point. Yeah. of course, the right of peoples to self-determination, which is a very important principle of the United Nations, but it is also a right of peoples in the two United Nations covenants, which are ratified more or less universally by all states in the world. And it very, very clearly says that there's a collective right of all peoples to freely determine their political status. When I'm teaching the right to self-determination and I'm asking the students, but what is a good example of a people that does not enjoy so far the right to self-determination, usually the Palestinian people are the first ones that are mentioned. Of course, there are others in the Western Sahara, and we also have positive examples where peoples such as the people of South Africa or Namibia and later East Timor, and of course before in the whole decolonization process, actually were granted with the assistance of the United Nations their full right to self-determination, economic, social, but primarily also political self-determination. I mean, you know much more than I do, and we will discuss this, but this is the classical example that there is a people, the Palestinian people, that are still deprived of the right to self-determination. And that's the basis for every kind of democratic governance. Please, the next. And political rights in the more narrow sense are laid down in Article 25 of the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights as a very broad right and opportunity of every citizen to take part in the conduct of public affairs. Of course, I could now refer every time to the Palestinian people who are also deprived this right to participate in a very broad sense in the conduct of public affairs by means of direct or indirect representative ways of democracy. And the right to vote and be elected, of course, is at the center. It's probably the human right that has the strongest international monitoring through election monitoring by many different organizations that we see on a daily basis taking place. But the right to vote, in my opinion, is still the most important right relating to democracy, but there are also many others like the political freedoms, freedom of opinion, freedom of expression, freedom of the media, freedom of assembly, of association, are constitutive for a democratic culture. Again, there are limits to these rights and freedoms, but they are kind of the backbone of every functioning democracy, whatever type of democracy, and George Ulrich will later talk about different types of democracy. But I think without the freedom to express your political opinions, to form a political party, and to candidate in election, to be a candidate in elections, democracy will simply not function. Equality and non-discrimination, for me, is as much at the core of every form of democratic governance, whether it's the old form of equality before the law, but in particular equal protection of the law against any forms of discrimination, exclusion on any ground, from gender, ethnic origin up to sexual orientation, and in particular minority participation in the political participation. And in a recent book, I tried to outline that also the right to equality and non-discrimination also implies for governments an obligation to avoid too much economic inequality. There is, if economic inequality, as we see today all over the world as a result of neoliberal policies, is reaching a certain level then it really undermines the social cohesion and also the democratic legitimacy of a state. So that's why, because of the right to equality and non-discrimination, states do have an obligation to keep economic inequality, in particular income inequality, to a certain level. And I will come back to that in a moment. Please. Finally, in international human rights documents, we also have these limitation clauses, in particular to political freedoms. You have the right to express all kinds of opinions, but you also have a responsibility, in particular in the media, in order not to incite to racial hatred, for instance, or religious hatred. And that's why states always have to balance to what extent they have a right to restrict these human rights and in particular political freedoms. And already in the European Convention on Human Rights, you have this, this aspect that states are allowed to restrict and limit those freedoms, but only if these restrictions are necessary in a democratic society. And in order to know what it is, the European Court of Human Rights has developed already in the 1970s and 80s a very, very broad jurisprudence. And there it decided that the criteria of pluralism, tolerance, respect for the other, and broad-mindedness are very important elements of democracy. And it was taken over by the Human Rights Committee of the United Nations when they interpret legitimate restrictions, for instance, of freedom of assembly and freedom to demonstrate. So there is something in the very concept of human rights that you have to balance in a democracy legitimate restrictions, but on the other hand, only if they are really necessary. So usually freedom of expression is not there for those who kind of praise the government. It is there in order to also be shocking, to be outrageous, but there's a certain limit, and that is the limit of democratic society. Please. So what I would like to say in conclusion for this first part is that all major requirements of democratic governments, as I would define democracy, you find already in international and universal human rights instruments, as I have said before. So one might speak also of a human right to democratic governance, of course, primarily based in the right of peoples to self-determination, but also in all the other different rights that governments should actually respect, protect, and fulfill. Now I come to the second part, and that's the impact of neoliberalism on democracy. And I will, of course, there are many aspects of neoliberalism in actually minimizing the role of the state, in leading to, of course, much more power of transnational corporations and other global actors, financial markets, etc. But I take out two different elements of neoliberalism or consequences. One is the privatization of core state functions. And the other one is the rising economic inequality. And there you have one of the, in my opinion, most important graphs from the book of Thomas Piketty, Capitalism in the 21st Century, and I come back to that later, but you see here that in these 30 years after World War II until the 1970s that you had and these are, I think it's difficult to see it now from here, but the United States, Britain, Germany, France, and Sweden, if you compare those 5 countries, that in those 30 years, despite a very strong economic growth, the level of inequality remained at a fairly low level. And then with the rise of neoliberalism in the late 1970s and 80s, 90s, etc., then you have a steep increase. You see on the top the United States, that the level of inequality today in the United States is fairly similar to the level of inequality in the United Kingdom in the late 19th and early 20th century, which was one of the reasons for the outbreak of World War I. Mudar was already speaking of the World War III. I mean, if you look at Thomas Piketty's kind of analysis on the on the basis of 30 years of data collection, very, very broad data collection on income tax, etc., that he would actually argue in the same way. In the United States, we are now at a level that really endangers already international peace and security. Next, please. Yeah. I was, again, the book you can see here, it's called Human Rights or Global Capitalism, The Limits of Privatization. I tried to look into how far state core functions that are important for the protection of human rights are going or have already been outsourced to the private sector, and whether there are limits within human rights that would actually prevent it. So in other words, to what extent these forms of privatization are already violating, are to be seen as retrogressive measures and therefore violating obligations of states. And I analyzed that in relation to a number of human rights, for instance, the right to education, that you have in many countries a trend towards privatization of education, which means that the basic right of all children to universal and compulsory free private education is actually compromised already. But the same is with the access to healthcare, to social security. I think a very good example of that is Chile. You know, in the 1970s when Mr. Pinochet, with a very bloody coup d'etat, deposed the democratically elected government of Salvador Allende in 1973, that then there were the so-called Chicago Boys. Those were Chileans who had studied in Chicago with Milton Friedman and others. Friedrich von Hayek, who's an Austrian who was kind of in the background of the neoliberal policies, and they were then given by the Pinochet regime free hands in order to kind of as a guinea pig, so they could actually develop what they have learned at the economic school in Chicago, and it had disastrous consequences. For instance, and that was primarily in the field of social security. For instance, the whole pension funds were abolished and replaced by private pension companies, so that everybody, so it is no longer the distribution and the kind of equal spread of the risks, but everybody kind of is responsible for his or her own pension in the future, and it really led to, again, economic inequality and poverty among many people in the Chilean society in the 1970s and 80s. If you look at the right to personal liberty, starting in the United States already in the 1960s, 70s, but primarily then under Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, that more and more prisons became simply a business. So prisons were outsourced to private companies, profit-oriented companies, and at a certain point, in particular in the more southern states, they really became a very powerful factor, and that of course means if a prisoner is seen as a commodity, then you try to have full prisons, and it's the same persons who were running private prisons were also the ones who were lobbying for stronger, tougher criminal laws, and that's one of the reasons why we have in the United States a very sharp rise of the number of prisoners, of detainees. It's the highest in the world if you measure it according to 100,000 inhabitants. You have in the United States about 8 times as many prisoners than in the average in Europe, for instance. But of course, that was also taken over by actually this not really under Margaret Thatcher. It was at the end, it was more John Major and others who took it up, and Tony Blair continued with this policy. And today the United Kingdom is the country with the highest percentage of prisoners in private prisons in the world. About 15% of all prisoners are private in private prisons. But it was also taken over in many other states, in particular in the Commonwealth, in Australia and New Zealand, partly also in Germany. But in Germany, for instance, they stopped it again fairly soon after the German Constitutional Court intervened, which was similar also actually in Israel when the Supreme Court said that the privatization of prisons is violating the right to dignity and liberty of those individuals. And the same is with the right to personal security. That more and more the classical core function, and as the state has been defined since the 18th, 19th century, since the modern nation state, as the core functions is to protect internal and external security. If you more and more outsource the police to private military and security companies, then you might reach a level where the state is no longer able and willing also to provide personal security to its inhabitants. And we have many, when I was on an official mission in Papua New Guinea, and I talked to the head of the police forces there, he said, we have in a huge country like Papua New Guinea, we have about 1,200 police officers on whom I can still rely. And only one British private security company, G4S, based in London, the biggest one actually in the world, they have 4 times as many security officers than I have. And they pay higher wages. So my best people actually are always recruited by G4S. So it's a kind of and he said himself, I mean, how shall I still maintain public order and security in the country when everything is taken over by private security companies? But it's as much in private military companies. It's even more dangerous how far we actually have gone in outsourcing also the military to private companies. The Iraq War has been often referred to as the first fully privatized war, because it was not only that the private military companies like Blackwater and CSCI and those were actually lobbying very strongly in the White House with Mr. Bush and others and Cheney to say that we need to actually intervene in Iraq. But secondly, altogether, about half of the soldiers now under quotation mark fighting in Iraq, American ones, about half of them were members of private military companies, and some of the worst crimes also have been committed by members of private military companies. I once did an investigation into the Abu Ghraib scandal and interviewed many of the victims or survivors of torture in Abu Ghraib, and what they told me was, of course, torture was rampant there, but the military, the US military, were still by far the best. The CIA people were already more brutal, but by far the most brutal torturers were members and agents of private military companies. So that is, I think, a very, very dangerous tendency if the decisions about fighting wars are outsourced, in fact, already to private military companies who, of course, have a big interest. And it's the same not only in the United States, it's the United Kingdom, it's South Africa, it's in the Russian Federation, and many other countries that we have very active private military companies also playing a very important role in many of the African armed conflicts. Now, the last point is the rising economic inequality, and I referred already to the book of Thomas Piketty. That, of course, inequality decreased heavily because of the war economy in the First World War, because of the Great Depression, during the two World Wars, and then because of Second World War. So it was down from almost 50 to around 20-25 by the end of World War II. Also, the New Deal contributed to this. And then in these next 30 years, as I said, there was a strong economic growth, but the economic policy in most European countries, whether they were, and also in the United States of America, whether they were led by social democratic parties or Christian democratic, didn't really make a big difference, was based on the policies of John Maynard Keynes. And that means a much stronger intervention in the anti-cyclical intervention into the economy, but also it means a social welfare state that at that time was developed, at least in most countries of Europe, and that kept the level of inequality at a fairly about very stable, about at the same 30. Maximum 35 according to the Gini index. And then you see a very, very sharp rise up to almost 50% now in the United States. And of course, other countries are even higher, like South Africa or the Southern African countries. Please, yeah. Anthony Atkinson was a British economist who unfortunately died last year, but he was one of the most outstanding economists really doing for decades research on inequality. And he came up also with many proposals what could be done. So we know very well what states could do and should do in order to decrease economic inequality again. And I think it's, again, not easy to see, but that's the level of inequality. On top, you have the Scandinavian countries, which still have the lowest inequality or the highest economic equality. And then of all the highly industrialized states on top, you have the three countries. That is the United Kingdom, the United States, and Israel. But then, of course, you have others like Mexico and, as I said, South Africa on top with about 60. But what is also interesting that the People's Republic of China, so the communist China, actually is second already. It's here. And Taiwan, the capitalist China, is somewhere here. So it means communist China has today one of the highest rates of economic inequality. They had a lot of economic growth, but what economists kind of foretell is that if this economic growth would actually fall under this magic mark of 4.5% per year, then China will be faced with very, very strong social struggles and social, because of the high level of inequality, with social problems. So we will see. Please. Yeah. These two aspects, and there are many more aspects, in my opinion, are the most important root causes for the current crisis of democracy. The two speakers before me already referred to that. And I would say, on the one hand, I see a strong development from compromise to confrontation. We see that around the world that democracy, as I said before, it also means pluralism, it means tolerance. It means you might have different opinions. You might be very sharp in your electoral campaigns, etc. But finally, you must be able to find a compromise in order to build a government, in order to solve problems, in order to work for your country. And what we see today in the United States of America, probably its strongest, I think President Obama wanted to become a president of all Americans. And finally, he failed in many of his projects because of a fundamental opposition from the Tea Party and other aspects of the Republicans. But you see the same in European politics. It's getting much tougher, much harsher. People are no longer really openly talking to each other. They simply talk against each other, and then it's very, very difficult to form a functioning government. That, of course, is very strongly linked to a rise of populism, also racism, xenophobia, intolerance, and violence, as we see everywhere, including also in the European Union. The rise of authoritarian rulers everywhere, not only in Russia or Turkey, but also within the European Union. Whether we look at Mr. Orban in Hungary or Jaczynski in Poland, and of course also with right-wing politicians like Marie Le Pen and others in France, and we just saw that in Germany, where recently the very right-wing party got 13% of the votes, and in Austria we will have elections on the 15th of October, and we are very much afraid that we have again a right-wing government, a far right-wing government with very authoritarian people who actually openly advocate for new authoritarianism. We need the strong man again to rule our country, because democratic politicians are simply not able to govern anymore. So radicalization, and I mean, President Duterte in the Philippines is, for me, so kind of the classical example. The Philippines, with all their problems, were always a country that were governed by democratic structures and a fairly well-developed system of the protection of human rights. And now this is totally over. So I come to my last slide. What are the conclusions? I think they are fairly clear already. So on the one hand, democracy is built on human rights, but globalization driven by neoliberal economic policies led to this inter alia, to this privatization and rising economic inequality that is threatening the social coherence, and that is very, very important. A functioning democracy needs to be built on some kind of social contract, the social contract between those who are governed and those who govern. And if this social contract does no longer work because of radicalization, because of also this huge economic inequalities, when people try to, and we have seen that, understand, blue-collar workers do understand that the CEO of the same company earns 10 times as much, or perhaps 15 times as much, because they say, okay, we have less responsibility, he's working much more than we do, etc. But if it's 1 to 1,000, nobody would accept anymore that this person is 1,000 times as more profitable than we are. So, and that is this huge gap because of income inequality that people then feel, and that's also very, very clearly shown by evidence, that today you can work a whole life, you can do very, very hard work, and in the times of the social welfare state, you knew that at the end of that you can retire and you can kind of live from what you earned through your hard labor throughout your life. Today this is no longer there. So it is, as Piketty says, it's better if you actually marry a rich person from the so like a little bit in the 18th century, because by inheritance people are, and of course by income from capital, that is much more important than income from labor, and that destroys the social coherence of societies. Yeah, democratic elections governed by primarily, and again we see that everywhere, by money, by capitalist interests, by lobbying. We see it in the dirty campaigning, we see it in the corruption, is a phenomenon of democracy more or less in all also so-called well-functioning democracies today. There's a very limited power of democratic governance over the economy, whether it's transnational corporations or the financial markets. They simply have lost control of economic power. That's why, in order to change that, we would really have to turn around so that the politics again, and that can only be done at the international level, politics again become governing the economy and not the other way around. There's widespread frustration with the results of democratic governance, and that leads, of course, to more, and that's the vicious circle, to more and more populism, radicalization, and new forms of authoritarianism. So that's a short overview, and I'm looking forward very much to many of the more targeted contributions that we hear throughout this conference. Of course, most of them related to the situation in Palestine, but some of them also going beyond and analyzing the crisis of democracy on a global level. Thank you very much.